Hello everyone, my name is Sophie Wang and I'm from Central University of Finance and Economics in Beijing, China. The paper I'm going to present is titled Dual-Track Urbanization and the Informal Economy in China. In this paper, I empirically examined the relationship between urbanization and the informal economy among Chinese cities. So first, let me introduce the concept and the background information in China. The informal economy or informal sector is defined as the set of economic activities that take place outside of the framework of bureaucratic public and private sector establishment. And it is characterized by low productivity due to low skilled labor inputs, outdated production system, and limited management capacity. The informal employment was defined by the ILO as workers who have no security of employment, receive few or no benefits, and are often unprotected by state labor laws. In this sense, workers of informal employment are vulnerable. In China, there are two sources of urban informal employment: the urban newcomers and the urban layoff workers. At the beginning of the economic reform and opening up, there were only 15,000 informal employment in 1978. Since then, the informal sector in China has expanded rapidly. It was estimated at 29.7 million in 1990, and it quickly increased to 175.8 million in the next 2 decades, accounting for more than 50% of the total urban employment in China. Urbanization is defined as a gradual increase in the proportion of people living in urban area. In recent decades, China underwent substantial rapid urbanization. The urban residents exceed 60% in 2019. That is an increase from 18% in 1978. In China, there are two types of urbanization: the bottom-up urbanization and the top-down urbanization, and thus the so-called dual-track urbanization. The bottom-up urbanization refers to the spontaneous increase of urban population by rural-urban migration, and the top-down urbanization is the artificial increase of urban population by municipal governments redefining the boundary of urban area. The main differences between these two types are: in bottom-up urbanization, the movement is voluntary, but in top-down urbanization, the movement into urban area is involuntary. And in bottom-up urbanization, the new residents do not get a local urban hukou, that is, urban household registration. While in the top-down urbanization, the new residents, they can get a local urban hukou. In the literature, there's no consensus on the relationship between urbanization and the informal economy. Some theoretical studies, such as Roach 1993, propose an inverted U-shaped relationship between urbanization and the informal economy. But others, they claim that rural-urban migration will increase the size of urban informal economy, and certain policies can mitigate this effect. In addition, UK 2007 and Bensiwanga and Smith 1997 predict multiple equilibrium. Therefore, they can explain why some nations have experienced urbanization with modernization, while other nations experience urbanization with the expansion of urban informal sector. There are empirical studies provide evidence for the inverted U-shaped relationship using cross-country data. But there are also other studies that fail to find this inverted U-shaped relationship. So the main objective of this paper is to find whether there's an inverted U-shaped relationship between the informal economy and the level of urbanization in China. So we examine the relationship for the overall level of urbanization, the bottom-up urbanization, and the top-down urbanization.
So we contribute to the literature in several ways. First, to our knowledge, this is the first study that quantitatively tests the relationship between urbanization and informality using national representative panel data at municipal level. And second, previous literature on this topic often use cross-country data, but country-specific institutional and cultural framework might influence the size of informal economy, and such features cannot always be controlled in a satisfactory manner. In addition, cross-country study may conceal the heterogeneous relationship between urbanization and the informal economy. Here, in this paper, we use within-country data at the municipal level, and thus it will allow better isolating the impact of societal institutions. Third, none of the previous empirical studies have taken the bounded nature of the limited dependent variable into consideration. So in the literature, the dependent variable, the size of the informal economy, is often measured by the share of informal production or informal employment in the economy. Therefore, the dependent variable is a fractional variable. It's bounded between 0 and 1. Here, we use fixed effect fractional response model to account for this bounded nature of the dependent variable. Fourth, the informal employment data are not readily available in China, so we estimated at the municipal level using residual balance technique. And the fifth, we evaluate the relationship using 3 types of urbanization. So the conventional measure of urbanization, the state-sponsored top-down urbanization, and the spontaneous bottom-up urbanization. So here is our empirical strategy. The dependent variable is the share of informal employment. And it is a function of local urbanization rate, and it's a square term. So X is a control for the lagged city characteristics. And delta is the city fixed effect. Theta is the year fixed effect. The data we used are from public data set, such as the census and the statistical yearbook. Here are the descriptive statistics. So you can see that the share of informal employment has increased substantially during these 10 years between 2000 and 2010 by 5%. And the overall employment rate increased by 10% during these 10 years. And the major contribution is the bottom-up urbanization, which increased by 7%. The top-down urbanization also increased, but the amount is smaller by 2.6%. The real GDP per capita grew at an accelerating rate during these 10 years, and the industry structure is relatively stable. The real wage in informal sector increased by 20%, and the marketization is substantially improved during these 10 years. So here is the geographic distribution of informal employment and urbanization. So in the first figure, it shows the informal economy in 2000. So it seems that it mostly concentrated in the eastern coastal region, especially the area between Yangtze Delta and the Pearl River Delta. After that, the informal employment grew rapidly in the western and central China. So you can see here, in 2010, the informal economy is concentrated on the belt from Henan province to Jiangxi province. So here in the middle. As for urbanization, so in 2000 and in 2010, it both concentrated in the eastern coastal region. So here is the empirical result. So this table shows the relationship between the overall urbanization and the informal employment. Column 1 and 3 are the result from the linear model, and the column 2 and column 4 are the estimation result from the fixed effect fractional response model. So you can see that the results are consistent, and the relationship is inverted U-shaped. The turning point is at about 0.4. This shows the relationship between the dual-track urbanization and informality. So column 1, 2, 4, and 5 shows the linear model, and the column 3 and 6 shows the estimates from the fixed effect fractional response model. So for the top-down urbanization, its relationship with the informality is inverted U-shaped. But for the bottom-up urbanization, it is linear and is negative. Next, I also did a robustness check. In this robustness check, we separate the top-down urbanization and the bottom-up urbanization into two regressions because there's potential multicollinearity problem. So the result is consistent. So for top-down urbanization, it is still inverted U-shaped relationship, and for bottom-up urbanization, it is still negative. To conclude, so we find there's an inverted U-shaped relationship between urbanization and informal employment when urbanization is measured by the conventional way. And there's an inverted U-shaped relationship between the top-down urbanization and informal employment. But the relationship between bottom-up urbanization and informal employment is negative. So this inverted U-shaped relationship between the overall urbanization rate and the informal employment, the result is consistent with the theoretical prediction in Roche 1997 and empirical findings in earlier study using cross-country data. And the inverted U-shaped relationship between the top-down urbanization and the informal employment reflect the role of informal employment as a stepping stone for urban newcomers and as a substitute for formal employment. While the negative relationship between the bottom-up urbanization and the informal employment reflect that the migrants, they are more skilled and more ready to be hired by the formal sector. So this is a result of self-selection. Okay, this is the end. Thank you.